We all feel uncomfortable when getting judged. And as a result, we rarely put ourselves in those situations that people comment on our thoughts or behavior. We rarely put ourselves in giving or receiving feedback moments. But nowadays, these annual reviews or 360-degree feedbacks are so common in tech industry. And if you're working in one of those tech companies that either have very feedback-oriented culture or just once a year feedback review, you need to get comfortable with hearing feedback. I know, it is not easy. It's never been easy for me. And I know, I've always been scared of receiving a piece of feedback. The fear of hearing feedback make us put those annual reviews in closet all year. And just a couple of days before the deadline, we put together something, we submit it, and then when we get back when it's done and start to reading all those feedbacks we received, we start to get nauseous and frustrated, demotivated. And then we reach a point and we say, you know what? Who cares? I'm going to forget about all of this feedback because I'm not going to see it until next year. That's so unfortunate because we need to pay attention to those feedbacks we receive. We need to pay attention because that feedback may make us grow. People may see things that may not see in our career. And really pay attention to how people perceive our behavior or performance can make us be a better engineer or be better at what we do. I know it is in human nature to be scared of unknowns, as things that we did not know. We all fear those situations we rarely put ourselves into. This is the same as feedback, because we rarely put ourselves in situations that we allow people to judge us freely. We either stop them or start to kind of contemplating back. We simply don't want to hear our shortcomings, and even on strengths. We don't want to hear anything from anybody. Later on, this fear and avoidance will manifest itself into career destructive behaviors like procrastination, jealousy, denial, and many others which will degrade the company overall culture health and employee health. I am Nazanin Delam. You can find me on my website, naz.dev, on Twitter, Nazanin Delam. Currently, I work at Netflix as an individual contributor. I'm a cat mom. I love coffee. And I love to decorate my desk. Today, I want to talk about those tips that I learned during my career. Those moments that I received feedback many times that made me anxious, angry, and frustrated. And what I've learned dealing with those moments many times in my career. And now, it's easier for me to deal with these moments. I'm not saying I'm 100% comfortable, but after this talk, you will learn how to handle these moments. You will not be shocked. So let's learn how to actually take those feedbacks that are constructive and leverage those for our career growth. First, let's just start with internal feedback. It is easier that we get judged by ourselves than let others judge us. We are usually less critical of ourselves, I know, but we need to build that muscle of criticizing ourselves or giving ourselves feedback. One way to start with internal feedback is using self-assessments. Self-assessment is a great tool to make us familiar with our areas of growth, with those gaps that we need to fill to become better at what we do. With self-assessments, you need to be consistent. Try to review your work performance either every week at best or every month at worst. You can start with questions on your performance, like areas that you need to gain more strengths, how you can improve, how did you do well last week? Be honest and be candid with yourself. No one is hearing you. No one is judging you. No one is watching you. It's just for you. This is just for you. Just tell yourself those things when you start. You can just write it somewhere and even delete it for a couple of first sessions. You don't need to even keep it. We want to build that courage that you can be able to give yourself those comments and identify those pitfalls in your performance. So don't just try to please yourself and give yourself a lot of accomplishments or a lot of good comments, but also try to face reality and to try to be really realizing what are those areas of improvements. Think about both your accomplishments and things that you have failed at. Failures are great opportunities for learning and improvements. After you're done with assessing, now it's time to write down action items. Action items are crucial. Those are the next steps that can make you grow. There is no value in self-assessments if it's not followed by a set of steps that you can take to actually address those areas of improvements. Remember, this self-assessment is only for you. It is only for you. And no one is going to see it and no one is going to judge you. After you have done these internal feedback sessions for a couple of times, let's say for a couple of months or a year, and you get comfortable with you feedbacking yourself, it's different for many people how much time they will take to get comfortable. But when you're at that stage that you think, okay, I'm critical enough of myself and I really want to learn more about myself and those gaps, and now I want to hear from some other people what they think about my performance. Then start to create your feedback loop. I suggest you start with people that you feel comfortable with and you emotionally safe around. Start with people that you trust. I start with my best friend and with my partner. Create those feedback sessions with them. Ask them questions. Allow them to speak freely with you. Don't interrupt them. Don't try to contemplate and make excuses and explain why that situation was like that. Just let them speak to you freely. Be a great listener in those moments. And always smile. Smile even if you heard the most negative feedback ever. Remember, feedback is a sign of value. So if somebody is giving you feedback, it really means because they care for you, because they care for your career growth. So don't take it personally. Always have this positive attitude. If someone gives me a negative feedback, or if someone gives me a constructive feedback, or even a positive feedback, they put the time, effort to observe me. And that really means they care for me. Although the feedback might not be pleasant, or maybe really pleasant. So know that. If someone giving you a feedback, it's because they value you and they care for you. We started with those internal feedbacks. Now we created the loop. And now, after doing a couple of times of taking this loop with a couple of people that we feel safe around, you may feel ready to take it even further by introducing people that you are not that much close to, like your colleagues at work. Start with informal questions when you ask your colleagues, how was my project presentation? How did I lead this project? How does this block of code look like? Do you think I can do better? Is there an area that I can perform better? Can I write this document better? Just ask them questions. Have the courage to take their ideas. Remember, feedback is valuable and effective if it's followed by action items. So make sure you really take a note of what people are talking about and really think about those moments and sentences that people really observe about you. Be really open. Try to be a great listener in those conversations. Do not contemplate. Don't try to bring excuses or don't try to justify the situation. It's important to remember, feedback is not fact. When you hear feedback, you need to analyze it. That's why we say note it down. That's why we say think about it. We need to analyze how accurate is it. Sometimes it might be due to miscommunications or misunderstandings. If you hear feedback that really doesn't resonate with you, that I heard myself many times in my career, I heard things that I say, you know what? I don't think this is true about me. I don't think that person really know me. That's okay. You don't necessarily have to agree with every piece of feedback you receive. You simply have to think about it. If it's something that you can learn from and if you agree with that person, perfect. That's constructive. You can follow with action items. But if it's something that really doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. You can just ignore it. So, if feedback is not realistic, know that it's not a fact and just ignore. Last step, we started with that internal feedback session. We started adding people with trust and with people we are emotionally safe around. We got braver. Now we have more courage. We started to add people to our feedback and ask for feedback from people who are further from us. And now we are even comfortable with all of that. It is time to make it a habit and make it more serious. After all of these steps, you should be a pro in feedback receiving. But I'm not saying you're 100% comfortable, but I'm saying you know how to handle it. Then start to use some of your regular one-on-one sessions with your manager to discuss feedback. Ask for feedback from people who have more serious role in your career, like your manager or your supervisor. You can have some sort of a meeting arrangement for those days. Like, you can review your self-assessment if you're okay with sharing it with your manager. Because really, your manager knowing that you pay attention to your performance. You can share that assessments a couple of days ahead to the meeting so the manager takes time to actually read it and come prepared. Second, ask for feedback. Prepare some questions for your manager. Ask how did you do? Remember, don't try to prepare very generic questions because you don't want to put people on the spot with a very generic like, how am I doing? Instead of these generic questions, be more specific and smart with your sentences and questions. Make them targeted to a specific project or a specific meeting or a specific situation. Like, how did I do in Project X meeting while I was presenting the requirement document? When I write technical documents, do you think is there any area I can improve on? Do you remember the last document I wrote? Where are the things that I could do better in there? So try to ask those questions that are more detail-oriented than just asking more generic questions. And those really internal assessments sessions can help you with coming up with these questions that you need to follow up with people later on. And lastly, and most important of all, set action items. Feedback is not having any value if it's not followed by a set of action items. What do you need to do? What do you need to do to follow up with those feedbacks? Let's say if your writing wasn't as perfect in that document, what are the action items or steps you can take to improve your technical writing? Maybe there is a course you can take, or maybe there is someone in the office who can help you with resources. What are you going to do next? So let's wrap up. We talked about how to get comfortable with receiving feedback by starting with internal feedback and judging ourselves. When we are comfortable with that, we start to create our feedback loop. Adding people who we trust and who we emotionally safe around. After that, we're going to expand this feedback loop with people who are further from us. And then we're going to make it a habit at work to constantly talk about feedback and to constantly talk about our performance. So, after this meeting, I want you to take 10 minutes to think about how did you do last week at work. Really, take that 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Take that internal time and really think about how did you do last week? Start that muscle of internal feedback. If you're great at that, then take the next step. After this meeting, go to your partner, talk to your friend, ask them question. How am I as a person? How do you see me? How do I communicate with people? It's important to know feeling a little bit hurt and sad when you receive a negative feedback, it's totally natural. I've been in that situations many, many times before. I look at feedback like public speaking. Even if you have done it hundreds of times and been on that stages many, many times, even if you're a pro public speaker, still when you go on that stage, you feel anxious. I see feedback similar. These tips can help you manage feedback, can help you how to receive it and what to ignore, what to keep, what steps you take. But don't expect to be comfortable. Don't expect that you receive something very negative and you be happy. That's not natural. It is okay that we react to feedback, but we should make sure we are managing that reaction. The reaction is not visible to person that actually giving us feedback. We can control that reaction. So remember, you will never be 100% comfortable with a piece of very negative feedback unless you ignore. But if you try to understand it, it will a little bit hurt you over time. But after following these tips, you know when to ignore and let go, and you know when not, and learn from it. Start with that internal feedback. And I hope this journey of feedback receiving make you grow. Thank you. If you have any questions or you want to connect with me, go to my website, find all my social handles, my email, my portfolio. You can find my Twitter, my Instagram, and find my Medium articles. I have a couple more on feedback. Feel free to connect with me. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Thank you for listening to me.